That would be funny if we just start with episode 2. It happened. We're not going to redo it. Hello, I bring you tidings of good beer and better gospel. My name is Matt, just like it was last time.
Yeah, and my name is still Tommy. Welcome, everyone, to Three Beer Gospel. I guess the second episode. We'll see.
Yeah, we were discussing whether or not the last episode, which there's no recording of.
Well, there's half a recording of.
Okay, well. Oh, you know what?
Because.
Now that could be an interesting bonus content thing.
Ooh.
Where we just dub in my portion of it. Right? With gibberish. Nonsense.
We'll get the people who do the bad lip reading.
There you go.
For you. So
there's video of me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what happened was I was out of town and we did a remote thing because of COVID, and I was in another part of Ohio. And we tried Tommy tried to record it, but something happened and it only recorded his part of the conversation. So I was silent, but there was video of both of us.
Mm-hmm.
Now it might all be for the best because I just prior to that I had spent too much time at Brewery 33, which was technically within walking distance, but there was a lot of snow, so not really. And I had I think at least 3 beers there at the bar, making conversation with West Virginians. They both left. Well, both groups left before I did. I don't know. Conclude from that what you will. Then I came back and we recorded, but then I had I think I had bourbon and another beer, and it was all not a great idea to do that much drinking in hindsight. But probably made for an interesting conversation.
Yeah, from what I remember, it was pretty good.
I had fun.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah. So, like I said, so this is, I guess we'll just go ahead and call this episode 2, just because, it'll be like,
yay,
like Leonard Part 6, or if anyone knows what I'm talking about. Or, because for those who, I guess, I want to say fans of the show, hopefully some of you listening now also heard our, I'm going to say intro, but I guess we don't really have an episode 1, and I don't even know if you could say we have an intro episode unless you count 2 hours.
It was like an origin story.
Yeah,
it turned out to be.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like our Silmarillion.
Yeah, we didn't kill Uncle Ben again, though. That's a joke about Spider-Man Origin, how many times Uncle Ben had to die.
That I don't actually get, but I laughed at it.
Right.
Because I haven't seen any. I don't see movies, apparently. But yeah, so first of all, if you actually listened to that whole intro, thank you. A lot has happened since then, because that was back in September.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and what, is it now March?
Yeah, it's March.
So that's 6, and it was probably almost to the day, like 6 months ago, too.
That's crazy.
I remember it was in the middle of Oktoberfest season, which is like early to mid-September, so.
Oh, and that's right, and that was, it was like right after Oktoberfest, right? Mm-hmm. Or no, it wasn't it Oktoberfest night?
Yeah, it was that weekend, I think, yeah.
Yeah, and it was kind of lame because...
I even had this very Oktoberfest mug.
Right, that's right. That was a bummer because it didn't actually happen. It happened in multiple bars across the city.
Yeah,
and was not as cool.
Yeah,
not that I don't know that we would have gone. We've missed it before.
Yeah, we'll just say this year that was our excuse.
Yeah.
But,
I think COVID got in the way of me probably not going.
Yeah. No. So tonight, what am I drinking? Voltan Russian Imperial Stout.
From who? I
From
don't think I've ever heard of that.
Hoof-Hearted Brewing.
Huh. Okay.
It's tasty. Provided by your friend and mine, Jeremy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, good guy. Good beer. It was a housewarming present because of all the multiple things that have happened since last time. We moved again. So let's see what else. What else has happened? Let's see. Oh yeah. That's another thing we kind of joked about during the first episode that kind of wasn't, but was it? There's another podcast blogging personality we're a fan of, Bonfire Sessions with Matt DiStefano, also of Atlantic Happy Hour fame, another one of our favorites, and with Mike Machuga, I think is the other guy.
That sounds right.
Sessions. Yeah, and we realized after listening to that podcast, because I don't think I'd listened to it till after we did our first intro origin, whatever that was, and I was like, we're pretty much like the same format. It's basically just two guys hanging out, drinking, talking about stuff.
Well, they smoke weed too, don't they?
Probably. I think, if I remember correctly, yeah. But yeah, and I was like, so now it really feels like we're ripping them off because that's basically what we're doing, minus the weed, at least for now. Because we also have a guy, a Matt, and we found out a guy with cancer. So
that happened since then.
Yay me. Yeah, it's melanoma, stage 3. I had my surgery last week. Met with my oncologist today, and from all appearances, it looks like they may have taken it all out. So, but just to make sure, I'm going to be starting not chemotherapy, but immunotherapy, which is apparently much more pleasant, or much less unpleasant, I guess. So.
I'm confused how it could be uncomfortable. I mean, other than the needles, they got to...
Yeah, well, so basically, from my understanding, what immunotherapy is, it's basically just drugs that are meant to kind of like energize and like reinforce just my natural immune system. But I guess what can happen sometimes is like my immune system can get a little like too jacked up and excited, and they'll just start going after stuff at random, and it will just like cause like inflammation or something, whether like I can get like skin rashes or gastrointestinal inflammation or lung whatever.
You're not going to get bitch tits, are you? Like in Fight Club.
Well, because that's the thing.
It's not like steroids, is it?
Well, but that's the thing. If I do start getting side effects, then they treat it with steroids. So
who knows?
Yeah.
More new things could happen soon.
Yeah. But that's why I'm wearing the hat, because I had this stupid, weird, gross like tumor who I named Herman, was growing on the back of my head here. It got like seriously like about like that big. Like I think when they measured it, when they took it off, it was like 5 centimeters across. And
so what size fetus is that? Like, how many months pregnant was your head?
Well, I think at that point it was actually about 6 or 7 months pregnant, but technically. See, that's the new site they need to come up with, because I remember like, we both had kids, and like I was always like tracking online, like it started with like normal things, like now it's like a poppy seed, and then it's like a chickpea, and then a peanut, and like a grape, but you could tell after a while they started running out of like common produce. I remember it was like, no, it's
kiwi.
No, my favorite was an English hothouse cucumber. Like, I don't even know what that is.
I do not have a reference point. There was an episode, I think it was of WandaVision I saw recently, where in the show it takes place in, I think, it's a Brady Bunch, so probably 70s. Brady Bunch Yeah, I don't know. If you haven't seen WandaVision, that'll make no sense to you. But
Cool.
this episode took place in the 70s. And she suddenly is pregnant with synthezoid human children. I think synthezoid is what Vision is. Anyway,
I have no idea.
the doctor, it's in the 70s, so he's explaining to her, about what size her fetus is right now. And there's some comment made about, like, thank you for mansplaining this in the one way me as a woman could understand it. Food. Since I am in the kitchen all day long. It was something to that effect. And I was like, holy shit, that is really insulting. Like, there's just, you couldn't say just inches. Like, you had to say like 2 inches, like a lemon, or however big a lemon is. And like, why couldn't you just say 2 inches, however many ounces? Like, what?
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember when my
you're stupid. It's like a grape.
I was going to say, when my sister was pregnant, she found like an app or something where you could choose like different types of food to compare it to, and one of them was like pastries. So like, it's like a blueberry muffin, or now it's like a croissant, or jumbo cinnamon roll, or whatever. And I guess it's not, at least as far as that's concerned, not much better. Yeah, but anyway, so my head was pregnant.
It's like, you're struggling with obesity. Here's how big it is. In terms you understand, woman.
People are awesome. But yeah, so basically my surgery was to have that removed, but then they also found like another spot, like just like a few inches below, where it looked like it maybe like got into like a lymph node or something, which is why it was stage 3. Like, oh, it moved. But so basically now that's why I'm wearing the hat, because like right now in my head there's like a good, like basically about that size, literally just a hole in my head with a thin piece of what's called gamma graft, but it's clear. It just looks like thin plastic almost. It's kind of molded to the side. So it basically looks like I just have a massive open hole in my head.
That's all. It looks like vacuum packed bruschetta.
Thank you. But yeah, that's basically what it's like, shrink wrapped like to. So it's like, it looks like I looked at it, it's like, it's just so weird. I'm like, I should not be okay.
Like they let me leave with this hole.
Yeah, so that's why I'm wearing the hat. But I figure, hey, maybe that could be another like bonus for our Patreon supporters. Like,
when we try to make money sometime.
Yeah, so
maybe.
Oh, we have like the weirdest, like, theoretical set of like Patreon bonuses. What do we have so far? Like, so from the intro episode, okay, there was Matt ranting about ex-girlfriends. The episode that didn't really happen with only half the audio.
Yeah, we need to dub that in like Kung Pao, the movie,
And Tommy's gross head. To you, our beloved Patreon supporters, that we may or may not have.
Is there something endearing about how much we don't care about that? It's like no, because I do feel weird about like, thank you for donating money. Here's a product. Like, yeah. You know what I mean? Like, here's bonus footage that is good, but you couldn't get it without paying. That just feels weird.
Yeah.
I mean, I think making money on this at any point could feel weird. Yeah. Unless we're putting money into equipment or something where there's,
or like more beer.
Or more, beer money.
Yeah. It's the good stuff in case, like, also like the intro episode, you want to try to liquefy my liver again. Wait, that's another thing. I'm drinking at a safe distance now. So. So I was all ready for that first episode with like 3, like, not quite session beers, but like, I think because it was Oktoberfest, I had 3 different Oktoberfest beers. But then Matt came over with like I think like the weakest one we had was still up around 10%.
Yeah, which one was that?
Was that the Bog Beast?
No, Bog Beast was still a beast. That was a 14%er, I think.
Yeah. No, there was something. Yeah, there was something else. I don't remember what all it was, but yeah. Anyway. So Matt was trying to kill me, and
I thought, oh, it'll be fine. We're gonna split all these, and something happened because, well, no, didn't we start with an Oktoberfest, like kind of off camp, kind of like off recording or something?
Yeah, but we were still on it when we started.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and I don't know if it was just. We ended up, even though the recording is 2 hours long, that is the edited version. Yeah. The unedited version is twice as long as that.
4, yeah.
Yeah.
I did math. Yeah.
And I don't think it's that some of it wasn't exactly appropriate for an
really,
episode.
Mostly what we cut, it was one of two things. Either there were a couple times when we were like talking about like maybe more personal stuff and like using names that we decided later, probably don't want to use names. Or again, Matt rambling about his exes. Or
I didn't use names for that. I was pretty good about that.
Yeah, you were. That was impressive.
I mean, for the people that would probably, because we use names for the people that would probably listen to it.
Yeah. And then
the names of the people who won't ever give a shit.
But then most of the rest of what I cut out was, I think, just like insanely long drunken pauses, where like there's still like so. If you go back and listen, anytime I'm pausing like between words, just imagine it being like 10 times longer of a pause. So I still kept the pause in, just to keep the natural feel, but. I think I also cut out like how often I kept going back to the whole like God bless them or like bless their hearts, because I think that was like apparently.
Yeah, you did keep a few of them in, but you went back. I think probably too much.
Yeah.
Well, no, not too much for us. It was still funny to us, but listening to the recording, I'm sure it was kind of like, oh, that was a dead horse.
Yeah, like I was getting annoyed with myself. So that's apparently two things I like to do when I'm drunk: use the whole like bless their heart, God bless them joke, and apparently I really like to use the word absolutely, which I did keep in. Well, no, so if you're playing your own drinking game, don't drink on absolutely. You'll be as drunk as I was. So.
And now the thing is, you could hardly tell how much we were feeling the beer. When I listened to it, I was like, I could tell, but I don't know how obvious it was to other people, because both of us can. We can keep our train of thought pretty well. I mean, for being two guys with, well, I definitely have ADHD. You likely have it, and
yeah, at least some.
But it was certain vowels. It was certain vowels that were a little longer than they should have been.
Yeah,
like when you said absolutely, it was like absolutely. it was like two L's in
like
there.
Rolling my L's.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, or maybe they can just compare it to right now, because I mean, I like literally just started drinking, so I'm still pretty coherent right now. So,
so you had the cancer, you moved, still got the cancer.
Yeah. Well,
maybe.
I guess it's possible I don't, but they're still
theoretically. Yeah. Well, they treat it like it is, but it could all be gone.
Yeah, Schrodinger's cancer.
Yeah. Neat. So I had a long period of time where I was, or my PTSD stuff, was getting better, but I had like a long period of shutdown where I was just like not good for very much, but sleeping, probably for a few weeks. So that with the holidays and that it was just. I don't think we could have recorded much sooner. There was just like one weird thing after another.
Yeah, it's like we kept trying, and then because I also since the last recording, I started working like a delivery driver job. So I was basically.
Yeah, maybe shouldn't use the name because they have ears everywhere.
What's that? Yeah, I'm not saying it, but I mean, but. Yeah, because with that job, it was mostly like when I was out delivering, like I was normally out to like at least like 8 or 9 o'clock, and I was working 5 nights a week, and then and then one night like we're in a small group together with the guy who provided the beer, Jeremy, friend of the show, beer sponsor. Yeah, awesome guys in that group. So I basically that put me down to I had one evening available every week. And then I was like, oh, I also want to see my kids and my wife, you know.
Yeah, things are a little unpredictable at my house too. Like it was hard to, since I was already going one night a week for group, it was really hard to, things were that's also something that happened is things with Owen got really complicated. My son Owen has ADHD and some like emotional what do you call it? I don't know. Sensory processing and emotional processing issues, and so I needed to spend time either with him or things were just so challenging that getting away for an additional night for part of the night was not a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
And so getting that to line up with the one night where you were available, maybe available, depending on how late you had worked previously and how much you had seen your kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That job is probably gone now. Is that right?
Well, I'm actually going back this Sunday.
Oh, but dispatch only?
Yeah, so yeah, it'll just be just at the station doing dispatch and closing up, and so I won't be driving yet because I got another job. I'm hopefully got a good chance at getting, but who knows? But if that doesn't work out, I'll just start looking for something else. But that's the thing. Like, so I'm going to be doing immunotherapy, so the side effects won't be as bad as chemo, but it's still the potential of
could jack you up a little bit.
Yeah, like they said, one of the main things that's most common, like, is just like fatigue and But
you want to punch clowns? I don't know where that came from.
Yeah. Well, who knows? I mean, that could be.
What do you remember that guy in the fraternity house that you were not a part of? I was, but you lived there.
Yeah, I lived I was a part of the house, not the fraternity. Yes. Mm-hmm.
His euphemism for masturbation was punching the clown. It makes me laugh every time I say it.
This is the first I've heard of that, but yes, that is
really. It totally makes sense. It just makes sense. I don't know.
And I don't know why, but yeah, it does. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, right? You're like, there's no clown involved. Like, what? I don't.
And not even really punching. I mean, it depends on how you do it. I mean, I don't judge, but. Yeah.
I'm not a masturbation coach.
So
what's our topic for the evening?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
do we have one?
Deconstruction, eh? What's up with that? I don't know. What I remember in the episode we tried to have. I think we're like one of the things we were talking about a lot is just like, or at least something that's been on my mind a lot recently. I don't know and don't care about yours, but just like what I think of the Bible.
Yeah. Well, that was kind of forced upon me in a Facebook chat.
Yeah,
I mean, I had to wrestle with it. I mean, I had already thought about it, but I had to like come to some conclusions.
Yeah, and a certain curriculum we're kind of going through right now.
Okay, that curriculum that we're doing in small group, like small group. I'm just using terms because they're familiar. It's just weird. It started out weird. Some fundamentals we don't agree with. Mm-hmm. Penal substitutionary atonement, the fall, people being fun.
Remember one of the phrases being that the Bible is the primary and foundational way that God communicates to us. Like,
right. I'm like, well, that's news to the Bible. and to everybody for the first 300 years of Christianity who didn't have it.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's that kind of stuff, and just what we thought were mischaracterizations of God, more focus on Paul than Jesus in the New Testament.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and I will say, like, to the credit of our small group, like, and this is stuff like we've mentioned to them, and they're like the guys in that group are so awesome. Like, because also part of the group is like each week, like guys like we take turns like sharing our story or our testimony or whatever you want to call it, and like both of us shared, and we got like very honest, like with where we're at, and all the guys were. I mean,
yeah, we totally came out.
Yeah, and like I said, they certainly didn't agree with everything we said, but they're like, but that's totally cool, and like we're glad that you guys feel comfortable sharing, and they'll even say how like there's still like plenty of things from us that they like do find like helpful and encouraging, and they like encourage us to keep up, sharing our thoughts, and that's the same. Like, and I told them the same thing. Like, there's like I know like we don't necessarily always talk about it specifically, but I know like there's definitely certain things that I don't see eye to eye on with the guys, but it's still like I can tell like to a man, like every single one of them, like at some point has said something or shared something like that I found like really like cool and impactful and helpful, and so yeah, awesome group of guys.
Yeah, and it was nice to hear that stuff that we've said that they don't agree with challenged them, and they appreciated that, and it challenged them because they disagreed but couldn't really explain why sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or and then this isn't an ego kind of thing, but somebody said that they disagreed, but it was clear that we had spent what they felt like was more time than they had thinking about the same question.
Mm-hmm.
And it caused them to want to think through it more. Maybe not necessarily to change their mind, but at least just to spend more time with the question.
Yeah. And that's something I said, like, and because most of the time,
and that's great, by the way. Like,
mm-hmm.
Some things I would love to change somebody's mind on, but I would have to be totally sure I'm right, and that's not something I can prove.
Right.
So,
and just like they would say, like, there's things we said that it's like they can't say they agree with, but also like can't really argue with. But I would say it's the same with like them or anyone else. Like, plenty of things that they said is like, I feel like I'm not quite where you are, but I also can't really argue against what you're saying either. But yeah,
especially if it's doing good things for them, present tense,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's one thing I tried to make clear is like I'm not trying to, like you said, I'm not trying to change anyone's mind. Mostly, what I'm doing is, and what I think what we're doing here is good for is just, again, not trying to change anyone's mind, but just showing people that there are other people who think this way, and there are reasons people think this way. So it's more like, I mean, I hate to use the term like feeling like needing like to justify like my way of thinking, because especially like with this group of guys, and like I don't feel like I need to like justify myself to them at all, but more just making sure people like know where I'm coming from, and if anyone does think the same way, or even not even necessarily thinking the same way I do, but just knowing that you don't have to think all of the like accepted common ways of thinking.
So I was listening to a podcast by N.T. Wright, which I had to stop listening to for a long time, probably for like the last 6 months, because I was having problems with anxiety, and dude talks really fast. He is a fast-talking Englishman.
Yes.
And his co-host is like a little slower, but like his tempo just kind of like speeds up and slows down. And so I had to put him on whatever that app is I use for podcasts. I had to slow it down. So N.T. Wright sounded normal, and his co-host sounded high. And that was amusing until recently when I could speed it up without like him stressing me out.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to try that. And then slow it down more to see so NT Wright sounds high. That's
he just sounds very thoughtful, but his co-host is like, so what you're saying is it doesn't change their tone though. Like it slows it down, but keeps the pitch the same.
No, that's good. That's good.
Yeah. So anyway, NT Wright was talking about community and more specifically just the big time Christian leaders, like what's his nuts?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
The big apologetics guy who was like basically sexually abusive towards women. Didn't matter who. I want to say Ari something or other, but that is not his name.
Oh, Ravi Zacharias.
There you go. Yeah. Turns out he was kind of a turd towards women, to put it mildly.
Yeah.
And just kind of like Seth Wright was discussing, how do we address stuff like that with leaders, but then how do we address it with people in our smaller communities? And he put it in a way I hadn't heard before. I think he said that there is what the Bible covers, and Jesus also, Paul way more, is holiness and unity. And in N.T. Wright's opinion, churches have been more focused on, in these cases where people weren't called out early, they're more focused on unity. And there's this balance between holiness and unity. And one should play into the other, kind of like support the other. They said what happens a lot of times is Christian communities will focus way more on one than the other. If you have like a Christian empire kind of business thing, unity is going to be way more important because you got to keep that machine going because the machine is helping people on a larger scale. So you're less concerned about small numbers of people who are hurt internally. I think in our experience, in some cases, I think in our experience, some circles that we've been in, people have been more focused on holiness than unity and more eager to remove people if they weren't unified in the same specific belief.
Yeah.
Maybe not actually doing that, but that was definitely the feel. Now with our group, I think we have a very healthy balance. To toot our own horns collectively.
And I think we'll toot their horns too.
Yeah, well, will we? I think we have a good balance of the holiness, and the holiness not meaning like churchy.
Yeah, because I think both like
more like the image of Christ, the image of God, like being that.
Yeah,
and so I think, especially the guys in our group have done a great job not sacrificing one for the other. Focused on unity. And they'll step in if they think somebody's hurting themselves or another person, or if they think they have like a harmful picture of God.
And that actually happened very early on in the group. I think like day one.
Yeah, literally day one.
Yeah. So
the most awkward thing that could happen day one happened, where someone had opinions and kind of threatening. Maybe its opinions were just the way it was handled was threatening, and it was just.
Yeah, it was more their approach was kind of threatening, and like their expectations of
a view of themselves.
Yeah.
In the process.
Yeah, kind of. Everyone needs to be where I'm at. Kind of. And we're just like, yeah. None of us are where you're at. We've heard like, your thoughts on the moon.
I don't know you, first of all.
Yeah.
And just based on your delivery, no.
But I think like as far as like holiness and unity, it's like I think both of those can be kind of like bastardized and misused because like
for real, yeah.
Because what you were saying about the churches who like more or emphasize unity, like you would think, like to me that sounds like between the two, that's the one I would kind of want to overemphasize is like actual unity. But when
but don't you think that's because of how we've seen holiness described or at least used?
Oh yeah, certainly. See, I didn't say absolutely. But
Certainly.
That's going to be my new one now. Damn it! But in that, like what you were saying, like that context of where unity, like it was almost more like mafia like. Like it's all about like protecting, or like protecting the brand or the image or whatever. That's what you.
Yeah, like the mission.
Yeah,
is probably the internal term.
Yeah, usually is. Yeah.
It's like, well, okay, so what's the mission again? Greatest commandment and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
That's the mission, not our interpretation of how we are going to do it here locally.
It's like, oh, the mission is people. Oh, you mean the people that were like steamrolling and burning out on the way to get people? It's like,
but we gotta take that hill.
It's like, I don't know.
Big Lebowski. Right, but if you try to take that hill, you end up taking barrel rolls out of a moving vehicle, like in this movie. Let's take that hill. I need to watch that again.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That should go down in cinema history as one of the better movies.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those like, it's one thing to like just to ask me like, well, what is my favorite movie, and for me to actually try to think of something. But I think if there was actually a way to measure like how much people like things, like if they could do like brain scans, so I think scientifically that might actually be my favorite movie.
What?
Yeah.
It's like me as science, that's my favorite movie. But me as a person, I'm confused. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
But yeah, so like
picking a favorite movie is hard though.
Yeah. I mean, because I think in a lot of those discussions, what kind of clouds it a bit is like people thinking more like image, like what should my favorite movie be? Like, or what do I want people to think my favorite movie is?
That's a good point.
Yeah,
because normally you want it to be something other people.
It's like no one
can relate to, or something.
Yeah, it's like no one wants to say that actually it's dodgeball, but based on like my experience watching that movie, I'm afraid it might be pretty high up there.
So you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball.
I know. It's like I saw it in the preview.
Probably.
I remember they showed that in the preview, and we're like, "Oh, did they just show like the funniest part of the movie in the preview?" And now it's, but it was still hilarious in the movie.
Ben Stiller was in that movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of his movies are kind of a slow burn. Like it just is real dumb at first. So dumb, you're like, "This. I don't think this is good," and then it grows on you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so I think we were talking about the Bible. But then you started me on holiness, and that's like another thing that I've been thinking of, especially.
Well, doesn't it mean like separateness in a good way?
Yeah, it means like I think at least I've been told
set apart.
I've been told in my Christian upbringing, that it means set apart, like special. But
according to Jesus, though, does it? Like, how did Jesus portray holiness?
Yeah, see, that's the thing.
Because he showed it to be like an inclusive kind of thing. It wasn't a separate.
Yeah,
it was different than most of society, and like maybe separate in that way, where like how inclusive it was.
Mm-hmm.
But holiness is supposed to be greatest commandment: love God with everything, love people as yourself.
Yeah. So
that's holiness, and that's all inclusive.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's just, and this is something I think we did talk about, or at least I talked about in the recording. Like you didn't come through, so I don't know what you were talking about.
Who knows what I said?
Yeah. But one thing that I've been kind of working through recently is, holiness is a big part of it. Just the whole idea of how God is different than everybody. Whether it comes to just like the teaching about holiness, or even just like worship, where like it's all about, God, you're up here and I'm down here, I'm, bowing down and I'm nothing before you, but you're awesome, and I'm only awesome because you kind of chose to think I'm awesome, and then that goes
but I'm
back,
really not.
Yeah, because that's another kind of messed up part of the whole like penal substitutionary atonement theology. It's like you're still actually a worm, but God is just kind of looking at you through Jesus or something, because he's covering you with his blood now, so his righteousness is ascribed to you. So it's almost like a thing, like a covering he's putting over you, but underneath you're still rotten and nasty and gross and
okay. And I don't think the blood thing can make sense to anyone unless there were generations of like blood sacrifice in your lineage.
Yeah.
It just really needs to be so much a part of your culture that it doesn't need explaining.
Yeah, and then going back to the Bible, because in the Bible there's so many different metaphors. There's the blood sacrifice metaphor. There's the debt payment metaphor.
Yeah, the debt one is in there a lot.
Yeah, and then there's more of you think of more like other atonement theories like Christus Victor. It's more like a battle, and there's a victory happening, and so there's so many metaphors in there. But that's because in the Bible,
but wait, how do you have victory over when Jesus is always victory under?
Good question.
I mean,
that's why we keep you around.
Maybe it's like an over under.
Yeah. But so many people try to, first of all, look at the Bible as, and so all right, I guess we're talking about the Bible now. That's where I'm at. So,
let's do it.
I think
I might have to go get bourbon for this.
One of the biggest mistakes that Christianity made was having a Bible. As in, referring to it as a book, when it's really just a collection of books. And you can have the debate of, how it was formed and why they chose what books they did. But I think it's two questions. One is what's in what we call the Bible, and again, that's just what we call the Bible, which is these 66 books, which, the Catholics have the Apocrypha, then there's the Eastern Orthodox, and even through church history, there's been all kinds of different changes in it. So even if you just take, the modern Protestant 66 books, so first there's a question of, is this inspired? Is this God breathed? Is this, from God? But then the other question is, are these the only books that are inspired and God breathed? And I'm I really don't think they are. So I think just by closing the canon and say, all right, this book that isn't really a book is it. And so it's kind of put it in everyone's mind, so we view it like a singular book. But when you actually look at it, it really does not behave like a singular book at all. So even just with atonement, you have all these different metaphors being used.
Yeah.
But what Christianity has done is we've tried to take the Bible and look at it as, okay, this is a snapshot of, this is what God's trying to sell us. It's all condensed here. This is it. But it itself doesn't even act like a snapshot. It itself is not monolithic. It's not one consistent. It uses all these different, there's all kinds of different views of God in there. There's all kinds of different metaphors for certain things, but Christians will just, it's you have to pretend that there are no differences or contradictions, do all these hermeneutical and theological backflips and gymnastics to explain why all these things that are saying very different things really aren't saying very different things. But yeah, especially when it comes to the atonement, it's we've tried to boil it down to, all right, so it seems to be the sacrifice metaphor, I guess, kind of came to the forefront. That's why penal substitution has kind of become,
well, it's kind of I guess imagery wise it's the clearest one.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, because he did die.
Yeah. So all right, so now I'm bringing us back to the holiness thing. I can't keep track of where I'm going, but so yeah, so this just that whole model of, we're not actually good, but through that particular atonement metaphor, it's we're ascribed holiness and righteousness, but we know underneath we're still not. And so the whole approach to God is still like very fearful, but not like.
But where does that come from?
What's that?
Because where does that come from? Because even some of the like in a Facebook discussion where there was a guy said something about a particular verse or a particular chapter of a book in the Bible, and I went and looked at it, and I'm like, I do not think that says what you think it says.
Yeah.
And that happened again, and I was like, so if you go to a certain thing with a conclusion, you'll see things that support that conclusion. But when you really look at it, like I don't even in Paul, like I don't see him saying, especially in Romans, I don't see him saying basically we're worms beneath God and our righteousness isn't real, and it's just
because again, to quote your wife Erin, who's like, this is still one of the awesomest things I've ever heard. Like she said, like, yeah, God created us. He said we were good, and he never changed his mind.
And this was in the context of a group that was very clearly following a curriculum that was not teaching that at all. And the facilitator kind of went,
so the quote is awesome enough. The quote is awesome enough on its own, but it's just made even better by the context.
It was yes. It was like I won't say what it was because some people to get really good things out of it. But from my perspective, it was and I'm like, this is just my perspective. It was kind of like
probably mine too, and hers apparently.
Like if you could smash Messianic Judaism and Protestantism, like and like put it into a sausage machine, like this curriculum is what would come out. Like it was supposed to be kind of like Midrash, but Midrash is like an open discussion of the Bible, especially the Old Testament. Because for Jewish people usually, and kind of like discussing, well, here's what I'm getting out of it, and there's supposed to be, as long as your answers reflect the character of God, there's supposed to be no wrong answers. But in this curriculum, there were clearly wrong answers. Like there was an answer key to the discussion, and when I found that out from somebody else, not my leader, I was like, yeah, but you gotta be fucking kidding me! Like, you can't call it Midrash and do that kind of disservice to something that is an important religious and cultural aspect of Judaism. Like, it's all about not having the answers. It's all like that's what Midrash is. Like, it's all about exploring God further, the infinite everything of God, like the unfolding of meaning, as long as it fits within the character of God. So
I guess back to the holiness thing. Like
I should turn off my notifications. That's what I'm doing right now.
Okay. But yeah, one of the things that's that I found, I guess, not really so helpful for me anymore is just that idea of like all the theology, like emphasizing the difference between us and God. Like that, maybe this is just me like being reactionary, but like that's like what all I grew up with. So that now finding like all these other ways of viewing God, where he's like, no, like he is literally in me and I am in him. It's so like all these things that are true about him also being true about me. And even just like the way that God like behaves and acts, like and interacts with us, is still like I guess it's kind of tied to the whole holiness thing, but also just the way we view God as maybe, I don't know, we've maybe too personalized or anthropomorphized.
There you go, that's a word.
If I used either of those words or pronounced them correctly, but we still view God as like a like very like individual and separate person, even who is like acting very deliberately, and something I brought up in group. And I just like the idea of like people saying, "Oh, I'm so blessed," you know.
And then they wouldn't let you forget about it.
Yeah, they're still trolling me with that one. Even my wife started doing it now, which is awesome. But like the story I shared, and there's like, you know, I'm sure everyone who's growing up in any kind of like modern Christian environment like kind of knows or has heard things like this being thrown around, but I was on a trip through our church over in India, and we were leaving this one area, and like literally like right after we left, like they had experienced like all these like heavy rains, and there was like flooding, where if we had left and much later than we did, like we wouldn't have been able to leave, we would have been stuck there. But I guess there was all this like terrible flooding and, you know, chaos and everything happening, and people were like, oh, we're so blessed that we got out there. I'm like, well, what about the people who are still there? Like, God not blessing them? But so and this also goes back to, there's like so many things like that like tie into this, whether it's like, we've kind of touched on views on like quantum entanglement with like everything being so connected, like Matt's doing with his fingers right there.
What is it? Here's the church, here's the steeple, open the doors and see all the people.
One of my favorites. For those of you not seeing the video,
that was like visual sexual humor when we were like 12. We're like,
yeah. But anyway, the people just listening to this and not watching the video are missing out. So check us
that's
out
the downside. Yeah.
So check us out on wherever we post this. Probably YouTube. I don't know. But anyway, so God like blessing people, and so, but views on like how I really kind of see God acting more is not so much as like just like a individual like person, like personality, like making decisions and like acting in certain ways. I don't know if you want to say it's more like, you know, what Richard Rohr or someone like would describe as just like a flow, or just like maybe like more new agey sounding things, like just like the essence of the universe itself and like consciousness and just the source of everything. So it's something that's still active, but not in the same way like a person is. It's more just like God. Maybe one way I describe it is like God just is how everything works. I mean, I don't really know how to describe it, but one phrase I was thinking about, you know, being connected to the whole like blessing and talking to all these, like whether it's worship or other, you know, sermons or teachings talking about God and how he's separate, and like the phrase that gets tossed around a lot is the goodness of God. You know, like God is good. He's like, here's how he's good and better than us, you know, specifically, and all the things he does, whether it's good things happen to you or bad things happen to you, well, that's God being good. Because if it's good, then he's blessing you. If it's bad, then he's giving you a trial or building your character or whatever. So it's like, you know, Christians, like, we have an answer for everything. Like, literally, like, no matter what's happening, we're like, well, God's using that for this. It's like, sometimes, I don't know, I think they say, like, you know, everything happens for a reason. But as I've seen, like, and sometimes the reason is you're stupid and make bad decisions. Yeah. You know, sometimes literally like shit just happens. But I was thinking about that phrase, the goodness of God, and I don't remember how I got there, but probably just connected to how, you know, ideas like, you know, all good things come from God, and God is not just good, but God is goodness himself. It's goodness itself, or herself, or himself, or So I guess the way I would describe it, I'm not so much focused on the goodness of God, but the way I view more things now is just the godness of good. So it's just wherever there is good, like that is God at work. Whether you want to put the God label on it or the Christian, you know, label on it, you know, or even recognize that it's God at all, like he's in it.
So I'm right there with that.
Right.
I was reading.
I checked the answer key. You are correct.
Yeah. By the way, as I just lean in, it reminds me that so I put on a little weight, holidays and stress, and I don't know.
You'll do
put on 7 pounds, like suddenly. Yeah. So it goes. all to the belly and the boobal area. And
I actually lost about 7 pounds. Did you take mine?
I think I did. How do I get it back?
I don't know.
How do I get it back to you?
But they want me to have it back before I start treatment. So.
Well, yes, I think my face is bigger. At least feels bigger. And then when I smile, I'm like, either my face got bigger or my smile got smaller.
Well, it's probably because also your camera angle is from a low angle.
No, but like when I look in the mirror, hello. When I look in the mirror, like in the morning, it's from a little bit lower angle. I should get another box. I'm gonna get a box and I'll talk.
Cool. I wasn't complaining. I like it.
No, but now that I see it, I can't unsee it.
No, but you're cute when you're chubby. I like it.
What are these? Koala crates and Atlas crates. Product endorsement.
Yeah.
They are great homeschooling tools. They're just neat things. They're not super cheap, so we stopped getting them. Anywho, yeah. So I'm right there with you on the picture of God. Now here's where I get confused and like where I feel like there might be a disconnect with me with all this stuff, but maybe not. Okay, so picturing God as being everywhere, in such a way that the pronoun "it" kind of makes more sense, but at the same time, that is not personal enough. But using he or she sounds too confining.
Yeah, especially because if you just stick to one or the other.
Right.
Yeah.
So I kind of wish there was another pronoun.
We should just make one up.
Like a genderless pronoun. I don't know. Like Yahweh, that name, like we can only pronounce it because we've added vowels to it. But if you pronounce it just with the Hebrew letters that are there, it makes no sound except kind of sounds like breathing.
Yeah.
It's like if you close your mouth but then open as you inhale, it sounds like Yah a little bit. And then if you start with closed mouth and then exhale, it sounds like Wah, which is the more correct pronunciation of those last letters than way. It's more of a Wah than a way. So that's kind of that feels really profound. Like,
yeah,
because the spirit is breath. Like that word kind of means spirit and breath at the same time, not one or the other.
Yeah. Even in like some of our like modern language, like the word spirit and breath, like you think about like respiration, like there's that spirit word in there, and yeah.
So when I'm talking to somebody else about God, and like just talking in conceptual terms, it does nothing. Like there's no connection to that. Like you can't just connect to information. Like there's definitely like a deeper part of it. There's definitely a deeper part of things about God than that.
No, that seems to be what Reformed theology is built on. It's like you're just connecting the information, basically.
Oh, man, that's a tangent.
Sorry.
No, it's just like I don't get it. Like it's not the gospel Jesus taught. Like it's not. It's like taking just a handful of verses out of context, stringing them together, and saying clearly.
Yeah, I used to get it.
No, it does. Yeah. Okay, it has its helpful points, but I think it's because it's kind of a safety net.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
It makes everything of God so much smaller and deliberate. And yeah. And I was just talking to Owen tonight. We had a really good talk about God stuff, and other religions and
Nice.
talked to him about, like, he said, didn't stuff fall from the sky in the Bible and they like ate it? I was like, yeah. He's like, did that really happen? So we had the talk of, that's not the point.
Yeah.
And like, maybe it didn't. But when that stuff was written, they weren't really talking about, they were not concerned with facts, like the information of what actually happened. They were more concerned with imagery, which is like, which causes us to feel certain things about God or about ourselves. So they were more concerned about, like, what kind of identity does this communicate about God and about us? Well, specifically the Jewish people then, but now we can kind of like, we can apply that to us. Because we're all grafted into the vine.
Yeah.
But if the vine is eternal, then we maybe all have been always grafted into the vine. Because isn't Jesus divine? Christ is eternal. I don't know. Yes, we had a good.
I probably actually do, but I don't know that I know.
What the hell was I talking about? Oh, something about what started me talking about Owen. Do you remember?
We're talking about fundamentalism, about how that theology like made sense to us at one point.
Oh, that's right. The concept of infinity freaks him out. And I think that I told him one time, I think that's because you get it. I think it's because you kind of understand what that means. And he didn't like talking about God as infinite because infinity scared him. Because he said when he thinks, it was like so deep he couldn't communicate it to me, but I understood sort of. He's like, when I think about infinity, I think about this, then I think about this, and then I think about this, and think about this, and it never ends. He goes, and that freaks me out. Or he said, that scares me. I was like, I think yes. And I said, well, okay. It's like, it's natural for that to kind of scare you because it's much bigger than us. Because like we're just right here, right now. You know, compared to infinity, we're little. And I said that difference between us and forever, you know, like that is kind of scary. I said, but it's not the kind of scary that you need to be afraid of. And so I was like I basically was trying to explain to him the fear of God.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, looking at the ocean, if you're in the middle of it and it's all around you, that's kind of scary. It's like, but like, if that ocean is God, you're safe. So that's what I was telling him. I'm like, yes, it looks scary or might feel scary, but you're safe. And so you don't need to be afraid of it, even if it feels scary. And I was like, do you get that? And he's like, I don't know.
Well, but you see, C.S. Lewis said that he's not safe.
What does he mean by safe, though? Right? Does he mean comfortable? Does he mean like a comfortable couch? Like his use is just your comfortable couch that you sit in? Like what was he saying?
I don't know.
And didn't C.S. Lewis see World War I? Won't that kind of fuck with your brain?
It will.
I mean, like more than a little. So,
yeah, but I guess he was actually talking about Aslan, which is God, I think.
Right. Okay. Yeah. But again, that's looking at a metaphorical story, like it's giving you factual information,
which is how a lot of people look at the Bible. Going back to
and that quote, were you there for that?
Which one?
No, you heard that from somebody else, didn't I say that? Or somebody else said that in group about somebody from the previous incarnation of group.
Which one? I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about. So explain to me.
Maybe you just brought it up. And okay, somebody in a previous group I was in had said that we were talking about Jesus and how people find refuge or something. We didn't say refuge. If we had said refuge, it would have been a lot harder for him to say what he said next, because that's a Bible word, and that's for real.
You cannot disagree with Bible words.
Right? No, he's like, people take refuge in Christ or whatever. That I don't know. I'm paraphrasing probably several things, but like that's real and that's in the Bible. And I'm not saying it's true because it's in the Bible, but I mean,
it's real and it's in the Bible.
Right?
Yeah.
Like that usually. Especially in the New Testament, that often carries more weight just it being in there. Well, and then this person used, they quoted C.S. Lewis about Aslan, saying, like God isn't safe, and blah, 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 blah. Basically, lions aren't safe. They'll rip your head off or something. And I was like, but, it's not the Bible.
Yeah.
And it's also a story.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, it's a long, elaborate metaphor conveying, yes, information and ideas about God, but I really don't think C.S. Lewis would. I think he'd be a little freaked out that you're quoting him like the Bible.
Yeah. Well, then also,
he'd be like, no.
Now, I would say that they're like, if anything that he writes that is like inspired, and if every good thing does come from God, so if there is anything in his writings that is good and helpful for people, then I would say that is God, and I would say that's equally as inspired as anything that's in what we call the Bible. But
I think it's taking refuge in God is it's like all over the place, like especially Old Testament. So I
mean, it just makes sense.
That is safety, like shalom is like safety and peace in every way definable,
Mm-hmm.
So but it's not safety necessarily physical safety, because you can have shalom while you're being tortured. Jesus.
Yeah.
But he was God. Yes. But he called himself Son of Man more than a Son of God. And so he was more about, look at my manliness. Am I not a man? Look at my manliness. That is often more like women in the New Testament than the men.
Intriguing. But yeah, but speaking of C.S. Lewis, just kind of bring it back to like how people look at the Bible and like
bring it back.
Yeah, people will like ask questions like, "Well, is the Bible true?" Like, or does the Bible mean what it says? It's like, well, it depends what you mean by that. Like,
yes and no.
It's like
both.
It's like, well, is the Bible true? It's like, well, is C.S. Lewis's like allegory true?
Screwtape Letters and all that.
Yeah,
or The Great Divorce is one of my favorites of his.
Yeah, or even Jesus himself when he was telling parables, was that true?
No.
Like when Jesus was telling stories like
that. Yes and no, yeah.
Like, did he mean what he said? So people usually take that sort of like thinking to, okay, so if the Bible says something happened, it literally happened the way it says it happened. It's like, well, I've been like discussing with people where they say like, well, why? Because I do think large portions of the Bible are not meant to be taken as like literal history, like they're stories, or you want to call it like allegory or metaphor or legend or myth or whatever. I mean, there still is truth in there to learn. Like one of the ways I've heard, I think, was either by Peter Enns or Jared Bias. Like they say, like it. So you look at a story, you can say, okay, that story it's true. It's just not real.
Oh yeah, I like how they put that.
Yeah. So I've had like people say, well, then why would God put a story in there? And this is also like presupposing God intended for there to be a Bible, and he specifically,
or that he controlled everybody's hand who wrote it. Yeah.
So this is all directly like from God directly, and this is his words, not people's words, but God's words.
It's like that solves some problems and creates others.
Yeah. So if you're presupposing all of that, and you say, well, why would God put something in there that didn't actually happen? It's like, why would God just tell stories? Like, I don't know, ask Jesus. He kind of did it all the time.
Yeah, he wasn't. Like, do you realize the stuff that he quoted? It wasn't real. Like it wasn't scripture. Like most of the time, he taught from stuff he made up.
Yeah, and people would say, well, if it wasn't real, then well, the Bible doesn't say now this is just a story or just a parable. Like, well, Jesus didn't say that either when he was talking. He just would just launch into it. He just started talking. Like, there once was a man who there was a lady who was lost her pearls or whatever.
It's like, and then nobody in the crowd went, well, was he real?
Yeah. Like, where does she live? What's her name? I'm going to go visit her now to make sure what you're saying is correct.
I have questions for him.
Yeah.
Like, in what way did he gird his loins?
But yeah, I think we just get so hung up on, and then that's when you get the people like Ken Ham, who is like, no, you have to believe it all happened, otherwise you just might as well throw the whole thing out. It's like, why? It's like,
it doesn't make any sense.
It's like you're creating this whole arbitrary set of guidelines that, ironically enough, creates more atheists than probably helps people.
That doesn't make any sense.
Because you're telling people...
That's not how science works. It's not how history works. Imagine in science, if
That's not how Judaism worked. Like I said, you go to anyone back in that time and said oh, we're taking this all as literal history. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
They edited the law more than once. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like they made revisions to it, and they don't sacrifice things anymore. That was a big one.
Yeah.
But it's just not how anything works. Like in science, Newton had some ideas, and I think if I'm remembering right, Einstein came along and he was like, yeah, some of that was good. The other parts don't make sense in relation to the bigger picture. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that you don't just Einstein wasn't everything before me is broken. Right. We're starting over. That's not how it worked.
Yeah, because anything that whole idea of you have to believe everything in this book or a set of books is literally true. Otherwise, you might as well just throw the whole thing out. So then it's basically as soon as anyone actually starts, honestly, just thinking critically and paying attention to how reality works, you're going to quickly find a lot of things the Bible says, in the story, okay, that probably didn't actually happen like that. But then you're told by, the Ken Hams of the world, then you're like, oh, well, okay, I don't believe this particular story. I guess that means I don't believe the whole thing. I guess I'm an atheist. Cool. Whatever. It's fundamentalism is an atheist factory.
Yeah. And, there's also all different kinds of fundamentalism for believers and non-believers, atheists too.
Yeah, I'm thinking more just the whole biblical inerrancy, reform, fundamentalism type stuff, yeah.
So even within the broader fundamentalism family, because you can be fundamentalist about your Lutheranism, or Catholicism, all the stuff.
People could even be fundamentalist about deconstruction and progressive theology.
Yeah,
yeah.
And within, so let's say you're you've really only ever been exposed to Reformed theology or something. Just for example. Anything that isn't that is heresy, or at least it's just wrong. And so, if you pick apart any part of Reformed theology, and the thinking is if you're going to do that, then you might as well throw all of it out. It really robs people of understanding that there are other equally valid ways to interpret, at least equally valid ways of interpreting Bible passages. Mm-hmm. And in a lot of ways, in a lot of the cases, there's way more instances that line up with that and what people were saying or explaining, that make those other ones more plausible. Right. So just to say that, like, if you don't believe this, you got to throw all of it out, is like saying there no other opinions you even matter. Like, don't even bother, because like, for people who went from a fundamentalism straight to atheism because that was their whole thing, they had to happen. They didn't believe that one thing. Like, they could still be a believer. You know, I mean, if they were allowed to see all of the other options.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really sad.
Yeah. And that's why I think there's been, like, recently a little bit of, for whatever reason, kind of come more to the forefront, like all these, I guess you want to call it, like, high profile, like, Christians or like church leaders who, like, left the faith, and people are, the problem is, like, the way the church reacts to that, it's almost like zero introspection about, like, because you would hope that with, like, an organization like the church, it's supposed to be about, like, loving and caring for other people. It's like, you would hope that when someone decides, I don't want anything to do with this anymore, like, this is damaging, you would think that at least there would be some thought of, well, what did we do something wrong? What have we done? No, it's always, what's wrong with that person?
It's always blame the victim.
Yeah, but they're being driven away because of this, like, fundamentalist attitude of, well, if you don't agree with all of this stuff, then you're just not a Christian. So people are like, oh, it's like they're not wanting to walk away. They're just being told they're not Christians. So they're like, oh, okay, I guess I'm not a Christian. Bye. And
guess I'm not a Christian. Fuck off.
Yeah. Yeah. Respectfully, fuck off. But then,
may I politely? Oh, I just don't get that kind of. May I politely say you're stupid?
Yeah.
What part of that is ever polite? Like,
yeah, like, I entreat thee to go fuck thyself. There, that's
okay. That is polite.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that feels better. It's optional.
It's polite as
I like
shit,
that.
Man.
It's not a command. It's like, if you feel so led,
like,
go fuck yourself.
Like, yes, if you feel so led, and by the way, you do, then.
Oh, that was so politely condescending.
It's an art. But it's like, I mean, it's just like saying, I'll pray for you.
Will you? Okay.
I've heard that a few times, but yeah.
I haven't heard that yet. I'm surprised.
Yeah, I am too. What are you doing? What are you doing wrong?
I don't know.
You're not really a deconstruction person, whatever you call us.
Maybe I just had too many reasons. See, I'm waiting to skip that and go, like, just be called an apostate.
Yeah,
just because I have thorough reasons for, like, why I disagree with someone, or at least if I disagree, like, I think about too much. So, like, if somebody says, well, what about this? Or they say something, and then I'll probably have an answer because I thought about it way too much. Yeah. And so I have an answer. And I think
sometimes I usually have, like, the opposite problem where certain people will, like, want to answer, oh, why do you see it that way? Like, where are you getting that from? And I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I don't really have that many answers. I'm just kind of trying to work through some stuff. But some people, like I said, especially more fundamentalists, like, it's all about, like, having answers, and, like, before, like you have to know for certain. Like, usually, like, with scripture verses to back it up, like, every single aspect of everything you believe. Yeah. So the way people approach things with me, it's like the level of certainty they're wanting from me, like, I just don't have, and I don't even think is necessary. So I just can't really answer their questions, like, at least, like, satisfactorily to what they would want. But
yeah, and like, so I responded today to someone, and I'm by the way, like, this is brand new territory for me because I used to kind of have a panic attack, like trying to respond to anybody who like thought I was wrong. It was just too much of a conflict or potential conflict. I just couldn't do it. So like, I'm really happy that like today I responded like a lot to that one person, and
Yeah, I read through it. That was some good stuff.
yeah. And speaking of certainty, like, I hadn't considered that. They said something about like the Bible is the only way we can know anything with, like, I don't know. It's the only thing you can be fully certain about. It's what's said in the Bible, and something to that effect. And I was just thinking, well, I know certainty to be a problem at this point for me, and I think for anyone really. Having certainty about God or about for sure what the Bible says about something is a roadblock to growing in an understanding of God. There are certain things that are helpful for a time to be certain about, but just to be like, I'm certain, period, this is true about God. Well, then God stops. Then God's not infinite. It's a more humanized God. Like, there's, if we can understand everything about God and there's an answer for everything, then God is not beyond our understanding, and even the Bible doesn't say that.
Yeah,
God says He is beyond. I mean, the Bible says that God is beyond our understanding. So, to have an answer for everything from the Bible is also to violate what the Bible says about God.
Yeah,
that just occurred to me. But the certainty thing, I was like, well, I know I do feel certain about God in some ways, but what ways are those? And I was thinking, okay, it's like a relational certainty. Like, I'm certain God is love. I can't explain why. Like, I can't prove that to anyone.
I mean, it helps that is also in the Bible.
Right.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
But John didn't really explain it either. He's just like, this is true. Next.
Yeah.
And the only way that you can know that's true is if God shows you it's true. Like, there's no other way to know it.
Yeah.
So I'm certain about that, and it's like a relational certainty. I trust God. But I can't prove to someone else why they should trust God. I just know I do, and I can help them maybe see ways in their life that are examples of God's trustworthiness. But I can't, like, that's just a connection they got to make. And so I was like, oh yeah, so like I think there is certainty you can have, but it's a certainty about the relationship. It's not a certainty about factual information.
Right.
But I feel like God is relationship itself, in a way, healthy relationship, even broken ones. God's in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, the motivation in, I think, in anybody, even if it's the outcome is evil or the effort is kind of like an evil endeavor. Everyone's looking for something good, and I rape for me, like, is an example of like the worst that humanity has to offer, or one of the worst things. So the rapist wants to be loved, feels like they can't be loved, so they try to take it, or some approximation of it. And it's so their motivation was something. The need that they felt originally was a good thing. Like, it's good to want to be loved. But then trying to fill it yourself at the expense of another, that's sin.
Yeah.
And so just realizing that the motivation of every person, like the core motivation for everything, whether it's whether it's something that is a blessing to other people or is a sin against someone or God. The motivation for that was always something of God.
Yeah.
I don't know where I lost my train of thought.
Well, it was a good ride.
Yeah. So certainty. Yeah, so the Bible's full of things I think that drive us towards that relational certainty. But
Yeah.
being certain about things in the Bible is a pit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think another aspect of like how you view like specifically like certain stories in the Bible, like is this historic or not. I also think there's a certain element that's lost, or probably layers and layers of elements that are lost when you look at a story and just try to take it like literally historical. Because if it was meant to be symbolic, well, then you're missing out on all the symbolism.
And there's so many layers to it. But
yeah. And it's
like that's when there's like all the layers to the onion. That depending where you are, you might see even more.
Yeah, and it's not that there's, because obviously, one of the most popular examples.
Words.
I got there eventually. Examples like people talk about in the Bible, like did it really happen? Is creation, and obviously, like in the story, even if you take it literally, like as like the church I grew up in, and a lot of people I know do, like there are still like a lot of lessons in there to learn, and there's still some good stuff to glean from it. So it's not saying that like taking it completely literally is of no use whatsoever. I just think it's maybe not the most, but what makes it even less helpful is, again, when you go back to say, this is the only way you can take it.
Yeah. And with the creation story especially, like if God is infinite, then there's potentially infinite meaning there. And, well, I guess infinite ways people could relate to the meaning. Because there does seem to be like a clear direction to what's trying to be conveyed. So yeah, I don't take it literally anymore. But if somebody else does, if I can talk them into taking it metaphorically also, because it doesn't have to be at the expense of the literalness of it. Like, it just seems like God, if it was factual, like for him. I feel weird saying that. It is. It makes sense that God would make it so deep that it's both factual and metaphorical all at the same time. So if I can convince somebody to just like say, okay, sure, you don't need to stop believing it all really happened like that, but look for all of the metaphorical information that's in there. Like it says a ton about the nature of God, people, relationship with each other. Like Eve was created from a rib. Okay, don't just stop at she was made from a rib. Like, what does a rib symbolize? Like, I think I remember hearing that like a rib was like part of. I forget what organ it was. I want to say heart, but they also thought that like what we think of that happens in the heart, they kind of for a while thought happened in the kidneys. Like, you know what I mean? Like the emotional center of the person was in the kidney.
Or I think also in a lot of the Old Testament, it was the bowels was kind of the
bowel. Well, yeah, you punch somebody in the gut, all kinds of weird shit happens, So I don't know. But rib didn't just mean rib; it was like a symbol for part of the person, not just like a physical part. And so, like in like a spiritual, physical sense, she was part of him, and like that makes a whole lot of sense when people like date someone or find somebody they want to marry. Like it's like finding the missing part of you. Now, you should also feel complete without them to be healthy. But then, like on another level, you're like, but there's more. Like, there's more I didn't know about.
Right. Yeah, but so I'd say feel complete without that particular kind of relationship. But I think there's still something in us like it's never good to feel complete without any kind of relationship.
Well, what I mean is like, to be emotionally healthy without.
Right. Yeah.
So like, or you can have like a codependent kind of need where you don't function as two individuals. You function almost as like one individual.
Mm-hmm.
Like the one couple I want to mention right now.
Yeah, or like where it was
my sister gave an awesome name to.
Or someone and their host.
Yes.
Yeah.
she just referred to them singularly. Like it wasn't like last name plural. It was like last name singular.
Yeah, like the that name.
Yeah. So like me and my wife would be the Hills. So for us, if we were doing this, my sister would refer to us as the Hill. Like the singular person that appears to be two.
But
God bless him, though.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that this time.
No, for real though.
I get you.
Yeah, if it works, I don't know, keep it up.
And it seems to be. So.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. More power to him.
Live your truth.
Yeah.
Makes me a little sick.
Yeah, but
say that.
But that's kind of where I am. But,
I know. I don't like how some people apply that. They're like, whatever, man. As long as it's not hurting anybody. I'm like, sometimes it is.
Yeah, that's the problem. Sometimes you don't realize how it is hurting other people. Well,
if we're all connected, it is hurting all of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or should be. So if something that someone else is doing to themselves is not hurting you, then maybe that means there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, I think those people usually end up in prison.
Yeah.
Or running giant corporations.
I was about to say that exact same thing. So.
Not all of them. Some of them are decent guys, like one of the old CEOs of P&G, Bob McDonald.
Oh, yeah.
He seemed like a decent guy. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. But so part of my, so it's, my attitude is never necessarily trying to take anything away from someone who like wants to view everything in the Bible, particularly as like super literal, and it's really more just trying to get them to understand that like you don't have to view it that way, and the fact that I view things the way I do, like, is not a problem. Like, and you do not have to continually try to convince me otherwise. Which, especially for a Calvinist, is extremely ironic. But they are always the most adamant about...
Like, I must tell you the good news. And they're like, I don't understand why you think this is good news. Like, or let me tell you the good news. Some people are going to heaven. Some people are going to hell. Doesn't matter what any of them do. Yeah. I'm like, am I going to heaven? Nobody knows. Isn't that good news?
He's like... They're like, but I am. That's good news. But
if you really press them and you're like, well, do you believe, like, how do you know you're going to heaven? How do you know you're predestined? How do you know you're not a false teacher and you're going to hell? Yeah, and they're like, well, I don't really know that, but I have to just operate on the assumption that I am. And
isn't it convenient that everyone who believes in, like, total, like, predestination has been predestined to go to heaven? Isn't that convenient?
No. Okay. Not everyone. There was a...
Well, way to ruin my joke, Matt.
I know. It almost works. There is one guy. I think he wrote a book called My Life as an Atheist. Or... No. Shit. That's not true, because he's not an atheist. What is it? I'll find. I think it's in my Kindle library. I started reading it was really interesting. It's a guy who believes in predestination. He's a follower of Jesus, right? Like this is what his theology is around. Believes all of the important stuff about Jesus. I don't like saying that, but it's, you know what I mean, simplified.
Yeah.
Also believes he's predestined to go to hell. And has a really elaborate explanation for why all of that works and why he still trusts God even though he believes he is going to be torn apart in hell forever.
Wow.
And why he believes that's the most loving thing for him to happen because he's so terrible. And I had to stop reading it because clearly the man is not sane.
That is so sad.
And now here's this. I know, and here's something that's even more sad about it. Is he clearly has a mental health issue. I think he wrote all this stuff in the 50s. I think in the 50s or 60s. 50s makes more sense for mental health stuff. But I don't know. It's something like schizophrenia, bipolar, something like a pretty serious version of whatever it is. Because he talked about a little bit, but not really by name, I don't think. So here's somebody with a mental illness who's also a Calvinist, who saw no place for himself in God's kingdom. And that was his good news. And had rationalized all of it. Now, he had some insightful things to say about God. Certain theological things that were influential to other people. I think he was one of the fathers of process theology. So, like, his way of looking at the Bible and thinking about God was kind of groundbreaking for other people. But the conclusions he came to with it for himself was really sad.
Yeah. I just want to give the guy a hug.
Yeah.
It's like, screw what Dr. Fauci thinks. Give him a hug.
And he was dedicated. He was dedicated to his wife. Like all of the pieces were in place. Like just a really decent human being. Except he did not love himself, or think that or at least, I don't know. It was just bad. Yeah. I had to stop reading it because I'm like, you're saying some interesting things, and then you're like, and how this relates to me is like, now I'm sad again.
Damn.
I'm like, won't you be surprised when that's not where you go?
Yeah. Like, oh, I hope so, man.
Oh, that's gonna be a real long talk. With whatever, I don't know, whatever image of God that conversation happens with, that could take some convincing, you know? I mean, like, he could take some convincing.
Yeah.
From my point of view, like, I don't really think, well, if there is a hell, I don't think anybody's there, but I don't think there is one. Because where in God is there a place where torture is loving? There just isn't. Yeah. So,
or even if God is in all things and through all things and in all things in him, all things find their being. Like, how can there be a place where he is absent? That's one of the explanations of hell I grew up with was like, well, it's just a place absent of God. It's like,
well, then God's not God.
Yeah.
There's at least a concept above him. Like some concept of justice that he's beholden to.
Yeah. But yeah, that's something we can probably get into more in like other times. But
true. Yeah. You probably need to go to bed, don't you?
I do. And apparently the disk space on this laptop is almost full. So
to the past.
Yeah.
I have a really old laptop too. Really old meaning it's like
No, this is like a new laptop we just bought like in the like within the last year, but we just have a lot of stuff on it.
Oh, okay.
I guess the one we've done for like all our video work and other recordings, like it's what I did the editing for the other episode on, and all the recordings from our last episode that I still have all the video. It's still on here, so that's taking up a lot of space for nothing.
I think for fun, sometimes we should dub in. I think we should watch Kung Pao for inspiration.
Yes,
and then yeah, and then and then maybe I don't know if we should do the whole thing because that could take a while, but maybe pick out some.
Yes, definitely just some parts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll send you the files when I can. And take a look.
So where did we land on like what is the Bible? What do we think it is?
I really don't know. I mean, I think I guess if I had to say, I would just view like all the individual books and writings like just like any other like writings of someone trying to like describe like their impressions of God or like describe their what they perceive as like interactions with God and like what he's like and what he does. I mean, I've heard like even like in the Bible, you could describe it as you can almost kind of see a trajectory of like a growth in like the level of people's understanding, whether you want to call it like their level of consciousness or just whatever. But yeah, I mean there's definitely I would say there's definitely God inspired truth in there.
Yeah,
like what like, with things like you said, like parts that say God is love and like love your enemies and I connect that to where Paul says like for like we do not wrestle with flesh and blood. So I take that so like Jesus saying like pray for your enemies because as Paul later says they aren't actually your enemy to begin with. I think that's and one that's tough, but then things like where David's like saying like blessed are those who like smash the heads of their enemies' babies against rocks or whatever, and so I was like that's not God.
Yeah, Jesus didn't do a lot of baby smashing.
Yeah, or they're just. But I think that
he totally could have. Like people would have been down for it.
Yeah. But I think at the time that was someone whoever like David or whoever like that was their honest impression. That's what they were. That's really what they were thinking. That was what they thought of God, and I think in that way, like it's an honest record of people's relationship with God in that way, I guess. But
yeah, I was going to say something that came to me.
It like grows and evolves, and if you think the Bible like doesn't change perspective and has no contradiction, well, then you're not reading it. Or if you are, you're reading it with a
you really don't want to see that.
Yeah, very heavy presupposition and preconceived notions about it.
It means that your faith is weak enough to be threatened by that.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah. If the contradictions are going to make it all fall apart, and so there just can't be any, you have to rationalize it all. Then, and I don't mean that as an insult. Like means your trust is fragile. Like your trust in God is fragile enough that an idea can threaten it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I asked like, where do we land on the Bible, and we're like. You start talking, and something that you said brought this to mind. I don't think I ever thought this before because I didn't have a short version of like what I think the Bible is, and so this is what this feels good to say this
cool.
That the Bible is as much an image of God as the people are who wrote it.
Ooh.
So, yes. So as much as people have problems, I think the Bible has problems.
Mm-hmm. Or like an analogy I use, like people always refer to the Bible as God breathed. Like, well, and then the Bible refers to humans as God breathed.
Oh, and Jesus is the Word made flesh. That's literally what Adam was.
Yeah. So.
Okay, in a roundabout way, like.
Yeah.
The dirt was the Word made dirt, and then.
Yeah.
And then God took the dirt and made flesh. So yes, in a 2-step process, Adam was, or people, because it means Adam just means basically human being.
Yeah, or I've also heard it explained as like creature of the earth or something like that.
Yeah, that's it. The etymology is something along that lines.
Yeah.
Those lines.
Yeah, so when people say things like, well, the Bible has to be perfect because it's God breathed, it's like, well, humans are also God breathed. Are we perfect? So that either means the Bible doesn't necessarily have to be perfect, or as like was pointed out to me by other people, or like, what is your definition of perfect?
Yeah, like I might be willing to say it's perfect, but I'd have to define terms.
Yeah, but I would say if it is perfect, it's only perfect in the same way that human beings are perfect, which most like biblical inerrantists would say the human beings are imperfect. Then I would say, okay, well then I would just say the Bible is imperfect as we are, or as perfect as we are, however you want to phrase it. So, yeah. All right, we solved the Bible.
Oh, we forgot the big part. That everything in the Bible should be filtered through a Jesus lens instead of filtering Jesus through a Bible lens.
Yeah, we get that back a lot.
Yeah, and Jesus did not say the only important or trustworthy things in the Bible, but it is the most trustworthy.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah.
Yeah, they're. Well, I mean, as far as if you're gonna like say like, for example, I got a response today that I was saying that only the things Jesus said matters, and I was like, no. What I'm saying is that what Jesus said, if you got to break it down to a hierarchy, that what he said matters most, and so like everything is subordinate to what he said. Not saying that the truth that he spoke isn't somewhere else in the Bible also, because he did uphold the prophecies and all that. So he himself said there's truth other places.
Yeah.
Then he also corrected a lot of things, and I just keep finding out how many more of just how many of the parables he taught included people who were characterized as righteous or like the protagonists of the story who were just breaking the law all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Samaritan who stopped to help the Jewish man, like they broke the law every which way to Tuesday. Like they needed ritual washings, almost just looking at each other. like it was severe. Like neither one of them were clean after that whole, like maybe permanently. It was all kinds of broken, according to the law.
Yeah.
But Jesus was like, this is how it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yes, Jesus is the lens for the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Or just life in general.
It's called a Christocentric or Christ-centered interpretation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or like Christotelic, another one that's used particularly like in reference to like the Old Testament.
Yeah, but that includes Latin words I don't understand. So
it's basically meaning like because people will use words like Christocentric, meaning the Old Testament. It's all specifically talking about Jesus. But if we go back with a lot of
not really. Yes.
So Christotelic meaning, I think it's more about finding its fulfillment in. So even though a lot of the Old Testament writers weren't necessarily specifically talking about Jesus, Jesus fulfills a lot of the things they were writing about.
What's the one Greg Boyd said is the cross?
the cross-centered hermeneutic, or
right.
Yeah.
I do like that one.
yeah. Boyd, you don't know by now, very influential. I referred to him as my deconstruction gateway drug.
I think he'd really appreciate that.
Yeah. Better.
He had COVID last year.
Really?
For a long time. I listened to his podcast again for the first time in a long time, and he was just feeling better.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, for months. He said it was. I think he said it was the worst thing he's ever been through. And he recorded, I think, also not as much, but I think he recorded throughout it as much as he could.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, I wouldn't want to stop doing stuff I enjoyed as much as I could, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep, good guy. This is what always happens. We're like, we should be done, and then we're not.
Yeah.
And then we are.
Well, it's just like our intro goes for 4 hours. In conclusion, another hour. So
I still want to hear the parts that you cut out. I'm totally amused by what was still in there.
I think I sent you the original, or the originals. There were actually several. Yeah, because remember you gave me notes okay, cut this, leave that.
Right, and then after a while, I didn't really have any more suggestions.
Yeah, so
it just flowed pretty well after a while. I didn't. Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, most of what I was cutting was just okay, here's another long pause. All right, there we mentioned someone's name. Okay, and some of it wasn't so much taking it out because it shouldn't have been in there, but more just trying to piece things together. Yeah, but
so here's a tangent that.
Yeah.
I did talk about past relationships. I don't know, for 45 minutes or something.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. That was
yeah, like I said, funny, maybe one of these days more of that will see some daylight.
I'm sure it will. It'll probably, it'll squeak out here and there.
Yeah, so have it out there for posterity and whatnot.
And I was pretty tired tonight, so but I was in a good mood. So I hope this turned out.
Yeah.
Audience.
Yes. Yeah, so thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks, Matt. I'm glad this finally worked again.
We're in mutual basements.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Mutual basements? We're mutually basemented?
Yeah.
There's a line from a techno song. It's went down to the basement because that's where all the bass went. I was that makes no sense, but I like it.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense to me. All right. But yeah, so hopefully we'll get this out soon, and like I said, looking forward to in other various aspects, whether it's on Facebook, like I said, probably since we're doing video on this one and it appears to have actually worked, just maybe on YouTube or something, and like I said, part of this is we want this to be an actual community and discussion and hearing folks, and
even if you disagree, you're entitled to be wrong.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But or you're entitled to think we're wrong. That's cool too.
Right.
But
we might be, so.
Because I reserve I reserve the right to be wrong. So, and I will use that right exuberantly.
You have the right to remain wrong. Anything you say can and will be used against you.
Anything you say can and will be wrong. And and also hopefully having guests at some point, whether it's just we hope to just have just normal folks. So if just being part of this conversation between us sounds fun, we'd love to have you as part of this little conversation we have. And,
we're gonna get that going pretty soon. Yeah. Maybe probably not every episode. It'll be kind of hard to manage.
Yeah. And hopefully it's not another half a year before we do this again. But
no, this needs to be a lot sooner.
Well, now that I've got it figured out, and of course now that I got this figured out, it's starting to be warmer weather, so we may start being able to actually meet outside again together.
That'll be good. You're on a quieter street now too, so
yeah. So
That'll be helpful.
Mm-hmm. We don't have that sweet back deck anymore, though. But we haven't sold the house, so maybe we can just still record it at the old place too.
There you go. Wait, is it under contract or anything?
We actually just got heard today. That's probably fallen through.
Oh, no.
Something with the buyer's financing, they just couldn't get something together.
Oh, well, at least it's not like you changed your mind but made up a reason to get out.
Yeah. But anyway, before I get into that,
yeah, we'll figure it out. Maybe we'll go sit on the vacant lot that used to be that university.
Oh, yeah. There you go. That's right next to my house. Yeah. Cool.
If we get in trouble, be like, no problem, officer. We'll move 20 feet.
Yeah. You're welcome. Yeah. But
I kind of want to do that. Yeah, let's do. Yeah, let's do the tired family man version of breaking the law. Just go sit somewhere we shouldn't be.
Yes, I like it.
All right.
Cool. All right.
So I think we're done.
Yep.
You got to end with the hand lower. I almost ended it with it higher, and that would have been very offensive.
Yeah. Very against the zeitgeist, as it were.
Yeah, just ended with a simmer down. What would I do to the children?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I can't think of a better way to wrap up, so.
Ended with a simmer down.
Thanks, everybody. All right. Now let's see if I can remember how to stop the recording again.